The ballroom sparkled like a dream. Golden chandeliers rained light over a sea of diamonds, silks, and whispers. The air smelled of roses and money. Expensive money. Every guest here was someone. CEOs, heirs, politicians, celebrities who pretended they didn't care about fame. But in the center of it all stood one couple who outshone everyone else, the billionaire, Jonathan King, and his wife, Camille. Camille King wasn't just a wife. She was a presence. Tall, elegant, and radiating grace, she wore a gown the color of midnight, sequins dancing with every step she took. Her skin glowed like polished mahogany, her smile disarming even the coldest rivals. People called her the Queen of New York society, not because Jonathan was rich, but because Camille herself commanded respect. Tonight's gala was supposed to be a celebration. Jonathan's company had just secured a groundbreaking deal that would reshape the luxury real estate industry. The guest list was exclusive. Security at the entrance was tighter than at a presidential dinner. Every reporter in the city wanted a glimpse of Camille's dress and Jonathan's next announcement. But behind the laughter and champagne, danger. Waited, jealousy waited, and a storm was about to break. A jealous pair of eyes across the ballroom near the champagne fountain, a woman in crimson sipped too quickly. Her name was Victoria Hale. Once she had been the center of attention, the socialite whose beauty made headlines, the darling of fashion magazines. But that was years ago. Now her career had dimmed, her bank account thinned, and her relevance almost vanished. She despised Camille. Why? Not because Camille had wronged her, but because Camille existed. Because when Camille walked into a room, men looked, women whispered, cameras flashed. Victoria believed she deserved that attention, not a woman who, in her mind, had married into power. "Look at her," Victoria hissed to the friend beside her, eyes narrowed at Camille's laughter as she greeted guests, acting like she owns the world. "She kind of does," her friend muttered nervously. Victoria slammed her glass down. "No, she doesn't deserve it. People need to be reminded who's really in charge here." Her friend went pale. "Victoria, don't. This isn't the place." But Victoria wasn't listening. A reckless fire burned in her chest, fed by envy and too much champagne. Camille, the graceful queen. Meanwhile, Camille moved like water, calm, effortless, warm. She spoke to a group of journalists about a new charity initiative she was leading. Her voice carried the kind of authority that didn't need to shout. "You see, wealth means nothing if it isn't used to lift others," Camille said, her tone smooth yet commanding. "Jonathan and I are launching scholarships for underprivileged children in inner cities. Education changes lives. It changed mine." The crowd nodded, impressed. Cameras clicked. Reporters scribbled notes. Jonathan watched his wife with quiet pride. He often said Camille was his greatest investment, not in money, but in life. She made him better, sharper, more human, but at that moment, Jonathan caught something out of place. From across the room, he noticed Victoria moving, too quickly, too directly, toward Camille. Her eyes sharp, her lips tight. Jonathan's instincts screamed. He had seen business rivals walk into meetings with that same deadly look before delivering a betrayal. He opened his mouth to warn Camille, but he was too late. The moment that shattered the room. Camille King. Victoria's voice sliced through the music. The ballroom fell silent. Guests turned. Waiters froze mid-step. Even the band stopped playing. All eyes shifted toward Victoria, who now stood only a foot away from Camille. Camille blinked, polite, but puzzled. "Yes? Can I help you?" Victoria's lip curled. "Help me. You've taken everything. You walk around like some queen while the rest of us—" Her words tangled into rage. And before anyone could react, before Jonathan could cross the room, before Camille could step back, smack! Victoria's hand struck Camille across the face. The sound echoed like a gunshot in the golden hall. Gasps ripped through the crowd. Glasses shattered on the floor. Someone screamed. Camille staggered, her hand flying to her cheek. Her midnight gown shimmered under the chandeliers, but her composure, her carefully guarded dignity, had been torn in one brutal instant. For a heartbeat, time froze. Everyone was too shocked to move, too stunned to breathe. And then, Jonathan's chair scraped violently against the marble floor. His face transformed from pride to pure, cold fury as he stormed toward his wife. Victoria stood with her chest heaving as if she had just conquered something. But the truth was already dawning in her eyes. The crowd wasn't cheering her. They weren't supporting her. They looked horrified. They looked disgusted. And she was about to realize she had just made the biggest mistake of her life. For 3 long seconds, the ballroom held its breath. Camille King, the billionaire's wife, stood frozen in disbelief. The sting of Victoria's hand burned on her cheek, but the pain was nothing compared to the insult. Around her, dozens of glittering eyes stared. Some gasped, some covered their mouths, others reached for their phones, already recording what was quickly becoming the most scandalous moment of the year. The silence broke with Jonathan's voice, a voice that could silence boardrooms, command empires, and send CEOs trembling. Victoria! Her name fell from his lips like a curse. Jonathan King pushed through the crowd, his jaw tight, his fists clenched at his sides. He reached Camille's side in seconds, his arm protectively wrapping around her shoulders. His eyes blazed at Victoria, but his touch on Camille was gentle, steadying her, grounding her. You just made the biggest mistake of your life. The words weren't shouted. They were whispered. But in that silence, they carried louder than thunder. Gasps and whispers. The crowd erupted. My God, did she just... She slapped Camille King. She's finished, absolutely finished. Record this, record this. Oh, this is going viral. Every corner of the ballroom buzzed with disbelief. Phones angled higher. Hashtags were already forming in people's heads. In a society where appearances were currency, Victoria had just committed social suicide, and she didn't even know it yet. Still, she stood tall, chest heaving, eyes wild. She's not who you all think she is. Victoria spat, voice sharp and desperate. You think she's perfect? She's nothing. Enough. Jonathan's voice boomed now, cutting her words in half. The band's instruments rattled. Even the chandeliers seemed to tremble. But Victoria, drunk on jealousy and fury, didn't stop. You think this woman belongs in your world? She pointed a trembling finger at Camille. She doesn't. She married her way into wealth, and you all bow down to her as if she's royalty. Well, tonight I reminded you, that she's not untouchable. Her voice cracked, tears threatening to spill. But if she had expected sympathy, she was gravely mistaken. All she saw in the guest's eyes was disgust. Camille speaks. Camille hadn't spoken yet. Her cheek throbbed, her heart pounded, but she stood tall. Straightening her shoulders, she lowered her hand from her face. When she finally spoke, her voice was steady, calm even. Victoria. Her tone wasn't angry. It wasn't loud, but it was so commanding that the entire room fell silent again. You've embarrassed yourself tonight, Camille said slowly, her eyes locked on her attacker. Not me, not Jonathan, not anyone else. You. She stepped forward, her midnight gown brushing the marble floor like water. You think slapping me strips me of dignity? It doesn't. It strips you of yours. The crowd murmured in agreement. Heads nodded. Some even clapped softly before realizing the severity of the situation. Victoria's confidence wavered. Her lips trembled. For the first time, she seemed to realize she wasn't the heroine of this drama. She was the villain. and villains don't get sympathy. Jonathan's wrath. Jonathan's hand tightened protectively on Camille's waist. Security. His voice was a command. Two towering men in black suits appeared from the edges of the ballroom. Their expressions were unreadable, but their steps were firm, deliberate. They stopped behind Victoria, waiting for Jonathan's order. But Jonathan didn't speak to them yet. He leaned forward, his face only inches from Victoria's, his voice cold as steel. "You humiliated my wife in front of the world. Do you know what that means?" Victoria tried to hold his gaze, but failed. The weight of Jonathan King's fury was too much. She stammered, her bravado crumbling. I wanted people to see—" Jonathan cut her off. "See? What? That you're jealous? That you're bitter? That you destroyed yourself tonight?" His words sliced her like knives. The crowd watched, enthralled, as the powerful billionaire dismantled Victoria piece by piece. Some recorded, some whispered, but none dared interrupt. The public crumbling Victoria's eyes darted around the ballroom searching for support. But all she saw were disapproving stares, phones raised, and whispered insults. "She's pathetic. Why would she do that? She's finished in this city." "No, no, please." Victoria's voice cracked, her arrogance finally shattering. She reached out a trembling hand toward Camille. "Camille, please. You have to understand. I didn't mean—" Camille stepped back, her face unreadable. "You didn't mean to humiliate me? In front of my husband, my friends, the entire city?" Camille's voice sharpened now, each word hitting like a whip. "You didn't mean to expose your own cruelty?" Victoria shook her head frantically. Her tears spilled, streaking her perfect makeup. She looked nothing like the proud woman who had strutted across the room moments ago. Now she looked small, broken. The threat of ruin Jonathan finally turned to security. "Take her out! No!" Victoria's scream echoed. She stumbled forward, dropping to her knees before Camille. "Please, please don't do this. Don't let them drag me out like a criminal. Everyone's watching. Please, Camille." Cameras flashed. Phones caught every second. The woman who had struck Camille now knelt at her feet begging for mercy. And Camille, regal as ever, simply looked down at her. The room had turned. The crowd no longer looked at Victoria. They looked at Camille, not as a victim, but as a queen who had endured humiliation with grace and now held the power of mercy. Camille's choice. Camille took a slow breath. Her cheek still stung, but her voice carried calm authority. "Victoria Hale," she said, her words echoing through the hall. "You thought tonight you would expose me, but instead you exposed yourself. Your jealousy, your desperation, your weakness." Victoria sobbed openly now. Camille leaned down just slightly, her words for Victoria alone, but loud enough for everyone to hear. "You should have remembered something before you raised your hand to me. Power doesn't come from slaps or insults. Power comes from respect. And tonight, you lost every drop of it." She straightened, her eyes sweeping across the crowd. "Let her go. Let her crawl out of here with her pride in pieces. That will be her punishment." The room gasped again. Some clapped. Some whispered in awe. Jonathan studied his wife, his anger giving way to admiration. This was why he loved her. Not just for her beauty, but for her strength. Her ability to turn even humiliation into triumph. Victoria's collapsed security released their grip slightly, allowing Victoria to stumble backward. Her knees buckled, her hands shaking. She looked around once more, but no friendly face remained. Her world had collapsed in minutes. The people she once considered her peers now stared as though she were dirt beneath their shoes. She covered her face with her hands, sobbing as cameras captured every angle. Tomorrow headlines would scream, "Socialite slaps billionaire's wife, ends career in seconds. Camille King stays graceful amid public attack." Her name would be ruined, her reputation destroyed, and worst of all, she knew. Camille hadn't even needed to lift a finger. The aftermath begins. As security escorted Victoria out, the music cautiously started again. But the atmosphere had changed. The gala was no longer about Jonathan's business deal. It was about Camille. Guests swarmed her, offering sympathy, praise, admiration. Some even whispered that she had handled it like a queen. Jonathan stayed close, protective, but he couldn't hide his pride. "You didn't just end her tonight?" he whispered softly into Camille's ear. "You crowned yourself." Camille exhaled slowly, her eyes still fixed on the doors where Victoria had vanished. She should have felt relief, vindication, triumph. But deep down, she knew this wasn't over, because a woman like Victoria Hale doesn't crawl away quietly. She plots. She waits, and when cornered, she becomes even more dangerous. The city didn't sleep that night. By dawn, the slap was everywhere. Clips flooded social media, tabloids screamed headlines, and talk shows replayed the moment again and again. Victoria Hale slaps Camille King. Billionaire's wife handles. Public attack with grace. From socialite to scandal, the fall of Victoria Hale. The world had chosen its queen, and it wasn't Victoria. Victoria in hiding Victoria sat in her penthouse, curtains drawn, mascara smeared from hours of crying. Her phone buzzed endlessly with calls she couldn't answer. Former friends, journalists, business partners, they weren't reaching out with sympathy. They wanted statements, gossip, or distance. Her name was poison now. Endorsements gone. Invitations canceled, meetings dissolved, but the worst part wasn't the public backlash. It was the silence from the people she once called allies. No one defended her. No one reached out to help. She had slapped Camille King, and in doing so, she had slapped the entire empire the Kings represented, and no one forgave that. Camille the Queen. Meanwhile, Camille moved through the city untouched by the chaos. Cameras followed her every step, yet she remained poised. She didn't issue angry statements. She didn't grant interviews. When asked about the slap, she simply said, "Some people act from jealousy. I wish her peace." That was all. One sentence. And the world applauded her. Jonathan, however, wasn't so forgiving. "You let her off too easy," he growled one night in their penthouse overlooking the skyline. "She humiliated you. You should have destroyed her." Camille sipped her wine, calmly. "I already did. Did you see her face when she begged at my feet? Did you hear the silence of the room? Her world ended the moment she lifted her hand to me. I don't need to chase her. She's already fallen." Jonathan studied her, torn between admiration and worry. Camille wasn't just his wife, she was his equal. And sometimes he wondered if she understood power even better than he did. A desperate attempt, but Victoria wasn't done. 2 weeks later, she appeared again. Not at a gala, not at a party, but outside Jonathan King's headquarters. Paparazzi. Cameras flashed as she stumbled from a black car, clutching a folder of documents. "I have proof!" she screamed to the press. "Proof that Camille King isn't who she says she is." Gasps. Headlines exploded again. Inside his office, Jonathan slammed his fist on the desk. "She's trying to drag you down with her." Camille, standing by the window, simply adjusted her earrings. "Let her try. The truth always wins." Though, showdown later that evening, Jonathan and Camille attended another event, a charity auction at a luxury hotel. They knew the press would swarm them. They knew Victoria might appear again. But hiding wasn't their style, and as expected, she came. Victoria barged into the ballroom, her hair unkempt, her dress wrinkled. She clutched the same folder, her eyes wild. Security tried to stop her, but Jonathan raised a hand. "Let her speak," he said coldly. The crowd parted. Cameras lifted. Everyone waited. Victoria's voice cracked as she shouted, "Camille King is a fraud. She's not from the background she claims. She Her hands trembled as she opened the folder. Papers spilled to the floor. Blurry. Photographs, half-finished documents, meaningless scribbles. The crowd leaned closer, confused. Camille stepped forward. Her heels clicked softly on the marble floor, but the sound was louder than Victoria's shrill cries. "Is this your proof?" Camille asked, her tone calm, almost pitying. "Scraps of nothing? Lies you stitched together in desperation?" Victoria's face crumpled. "No, I can explain." "No," Camille interrupted, her voice sharp now. "You can't, because there's nothing to explain. You tried to ruin me. You humiliated yourself. And now you beg for scraps of attention because without this scandal, you are nothing." Gasps filled the room. Jonathan's hand tightened on Camille's shoulder, his pride radiating like fire. The begging, and then it happened. Victoria collapsed. Right there, in front of the entire ballroom, she dropped to her knees. Her sobs echoed through the hall. Mascara streaked down her face. Her trembling hands reached for Camille's gown, clutching the fabric desperately. "Please," she whispered, hoarsely. "Please forgive me. I wasn't thinking. I was jealous. I lost everything. My friends, my reputation, my life. I can't survive this. Please, Camille, say something that saves me. Please." The room froze again. Phones recorded. Cameras clicked. This was the moment. The once proud socialite, the woman who had slapped Camille in front of the world, was now on her knees, begging. Camille's final word. Camille looked down at her, her expression unreadable. Slowly, she bent, just slightly, enough for her words to fall directly into Victoria's ears. "You wanted to remind me I wasn't untouchable," Camille said softly. "But look at you now. On your knees, broken, and I haven't lifted a finger against you. You destroyed yourself." Victoria's sobs grew louder, shaking her body. Camille stepped back, her voice rising so the entire room could hear. "Forgiveness is not mine to give tonight. The world has already judged you. And you know what it decided?" She paused, letting the silence stretch, the suspense grip every heart. "It decided you're irrelevant." The crowd erupted. Gasps, whispers, even applause. Jonathan guided Camille away, his hand warm in hers. Together they walked out of the ballroom, leaving Victoria crumpled on the floor as flashes exploded around her. The end of Power by the next morning, every headline told the same story, from slap to begging. Victoria Hale's total collapse. Camille King, grace, power, and the woman who can't be broken. Victoria Hale disappeared from the public eye soon after. No more galas, no more magazine covers, no more invitations. She became a cautionary tale whispered at high society dinners. Never cross Camille King. And Camille? She didn't just survive. She reigned. Because true power, as she had shown the world, doesn't come from money or slaps or desperate attempts to destroy someone. True power comes from grace, from dignity, from never lowering yourself to the level of those who hate you. And so the story ended where it began, at the intersection of pride and power. Victoria thought a slap would make her untouchable. But in the end, the only untouchable one was Camille King.